And now a message from our friends at Fetching Food.
The 1970s and 80s had Elbow, Gravy Train, Purina, Meow Mix, and Bell Bottoms. You've changed your clothes, now change how you feed your pet. Like Bell Bottoms, kick the kibble and join us in the 21st century with the healthiest diet for dogs and cats. Feed naturally, feed raw, feed Fetching Foods.
Groomer Next Door Podcast.
So what brings you to Vegas? I just wanted to visit you.
No, we were just passing through. We were near.
Really?
Actually, I've got a show at the Greek Theatre in LA.
Oh, terrific, great.
It's tomorrow, actually.
Really? Oh, terrific.
We should go see that.
Oh, well, I'm not sure. I think I'm busy tomorrow now. I'm busy.
Don't worry about it. It's not set in stone.
It's actually very set in stone.
No, some of us have to work for a living, right?
Yeah, because I remember I became a rock star as a result of winning a quiz show.
Well,
Hello, pups and kittens, and welcome to an all-new episode of the Groomer Next Door Podcast, the Father's Day edition. I'm your host, Chris Green, and my guest today is going to be the always intelligent and wonderful friend of mine, Dr. DR.COGER. I really have to say, I'm so sorry I haven't been able to sit down and do the podcast with the Flea Circus on the radio starting. It has become really difficult to find the time, and I did start this really cool job. I work for a company called Choices for People, and I help individuals with barriers find jobs. And that is so rewarding, but also very time-consuming. So, unfortunately, the podcast had to go on a little sabbatical, but I'm going to start working better at doing these shows, and I hope that you guys are all tuning into the Flea Circus. It is on 99.7 KTTR right here in Raleigh, but I always put the actual link to stream from anywhere in the world up on the Facebook page. I love to hear from all of you. I definitely do the show for you guys. And, one thing about this show is, and especially on this particular day, I created the show for my daughter because I wanted to show her that you can do something. It doesn't matter. There shouldn't be anything that stops you. And again, didn't have any of the tools that it took to become a podcaster or even radio. I just learned how. And so on this Father's Day, I have to say, all of this is really because of her. And for that, I really honestly have to say it's an honor and privilege to be a dad. And I wish all of you men out there, whether it's 2 or 4-legged, furry or absolute not, a very happy Father's Day. And by that sound, DR.COGER is about to enter the podcast studio. So with that said, welcome DR.COGER to the podcast.
Oh, hello. Hold on a sec. Dad, we have a guest on the podcast.
Hello, pups and kittens. Welcome to an all-new episode of the Groomer Next Door Podcast. I did change the open there after 3 times. But anyways, I am your host, Chris Green, and joining us this week is our good friend, Dr. DR.COGER.
Hey, hi everybody.
Yeah, I'm not going to push anything this time, I promise. 3 times, and we're not going to do that again, will we? Just trying to move this a little bit. So anyways, without all that mistakes being made, so tell us what's new with you.
Oh, wow. Well, what's new with me? Healthy Dog Expo is new and old. We are unbelievably 8 months away from it. And my head speakers are confirmed, which is amazing. I have Rodney Habib, direct from Nova Scotia, Canada. Oh my God, I can't believe it. Also from Canada, from Ancramdale, someplace in Ontario, a little closer to New York than Nova Scotia. The amazing agility trainer and online course leader, Susan Garrett. The one and only Susan Sixton of Truth About Pet Food, and Dr. Kendra Pope, the one of the very few handful of integrative oncologists in the country. And I'm working on some other surprises, some breakout sessions and stuff. So it's going to be an amazing day.
You know, I told you before we started, and kind of a little insight to what it's like before we do a podcast. So we talk for probably, I don't know, it feels like 10 minutes. I don't even know what we talked for. It might have been an hour, who knows. And we were talking about Healthy Dog Expo, and I had said how I'm geeking out, and I'm just kind of living in the future because I'm going to be there with bells on. I might even sew some bells on my clothes just to make a point. And to know that all these great individuals will be there in person, yeah, I'm going to be a nerd.
Yeah. You're going to be in good company because the excitement as people are grabbing up tickets and the comments I'm getting when I share stuff, people are blown out of the water. You know, Rodney hasn't been down our way, to my knowledge, ever. I think the closest was Philadelphia. Susan generally doesn't travel, but for week-long agility camps in Italy and Australia and, you know, crazy places. Susan, after the first year I had her up here and it snowed and she froze a bit, I didn't think I'd get her to come back up, but she's game. I do have to get her electric socks, though, just in case. She's lived in Florida a long time, and she is just not, as she puts it, she's just not acclimated to this nonsense.
I'm not either.
April in New York, it could be 80, it could be 20 and snowing. So we never know.
So what you're saying is that I should pack shorts and long johns.
You got it.
Okay, good.
Got it.
Gotcha. All right. So I'm already putting my clothes in my backpack, ready to go. Okay, so we got that done. Cool.
Exactly.
Now, if only we could get the wonderful Dr. Becker to show up.
Hey, you know, you never know. You never know, but she is an incredibly busy woman. I don't know how she knows what time zone she's in because I've never met a harder working person in my life. So, yeah, and at last report, at least on Facebook, I saw a video, and I think Rodney had her doing his shopping because they were at the grocery store, and she was pushing a shopping cart. So, I mean, even if it's time off, she's getting put to work.
I don't know. I have no inside information on this, but I don't know why I feel like she'll be there, or she'll make a drop in. I don't know why.
Oh, she's perfectly capable of doing that, and there are other people who could do that too.
Yeah.
You know, the more I'm finding as people find out who's going to be there, they're like, well, I want to be part of it too.
Well, you know, you can put me to work at
happens.
Anything you want to do to put me to work, I will do it because
Absolutely.
As we already probably know, I love attention. So shocking, I know, but yep, I will definitely be able to do whatever you need.
Be careful what you ask for. You may be schlepping boxes up and down stairs.
It's possible, but at least I'll be there. So hey, I mean, I'm still happy.
You'll be there. No, it'll be fun. It's going to be an amazing crowd of people, and I can't wait. So, you know, every day I'm sharing the information, I'm answering questions, I'm working on what sponsors are going to be there, who's going to be in the exhibitor and vendor area. It's going to be huge.
It's going to be fun. I had thought about taking my daughter with me, but she's not as science driven as I am yet. So I'm not sure.
And there's going to be plenty of science there for the science geeks. As well as just some, you know, plain old basic fundamentals and some advanced stuff. You know, I'm going to try to have something for everybody.
Well, yeah, I mean, basic fundamentals are great, especially when it comes to this particular topic. Majority of people are still programmed to kibble is and has always been the way of feeding our dogs. So therefore, what other choice do we have?
Well, but you know, there's more choices than ever these days, and there's more problems being exposed in kibbles and commercial foods than ever. I mean, it seems like every day there's another recall or another piece of research that shows that, another form of food is better. We have the Hills recall that's been going on, since last November?
Something like that.
And they keep expanding it. And it includes both quote-unquote prescription foods and over-the-counter foods, which is amazing, and which tells you that those prescription foods are not made much differently than the over-the-counter, despite costing 3 times as much.
And there we go into my soapbox. So we already know I jump on that one. Like, what's the difference between this wonderful bag of prescription garbage to opposed to what you just buy in stores?
I have something that you may not know.
I'm sure you have a lot.
I didn't know it. Did you know that Hills actually trademarked the words prescription diet? And that is why it is, Hills prescription, let's say ID or KD or pick your D. And no other quote-unquote prescription pet food will say that. They'll say therapeutic diet or veterinary diet. They cannot say prescription diet because Hills trademarked it.
Oh my goodness! No, I did not know that.
And I thought, and I wish I knew a lawyer that I could explain this to me. I thought you could not trademark
medical terms.
Common words.
That's a medical term.
Terms, or it is a medical term for common words.
Yeah.
But evidently you can, at least when it comes to prescription food.
Well, I mean,
prescription diet.
We're talking about somebody who was talking about trademarking a name that has already been known, which was Terrific Tom. Tom Brady, of course, your neighbor to right close by.
Right.
He wanted this week to trademark Terrific Tom, and that's Tom Seaver's nickname from baseball. So, talk about trademarks and things that should not be done. There's another one. So everybody's learning a lot today.
Yeah. Well, and it is truly not a prescription product by definition, because a prescription product is something that is sold at a pharmacy for which a doctor writes a prescription. And that's no pharmacies sell this food. It is not a drug. It does not fall under FDA prescription rules, if you will. So, to call it a prescription thing is just not correct.
So,
and when you look at the ingredients and compare it to over-the-counter versions, it's remarkably similar.
So take me through something, because I've never asked this question. I'm really, really curious now. So, as a veterinarian, this is a topic perfect suited for you. So you have a pet patient, there, and the pet parents there.
Mm-hmm.
I meant to say pet parent and patient. And let's just say you do prescribe one of these quote-unquote prescriptions. It's just, all it is we recommend this type of food. It's not like you're taking out a notepad and writing a script saying, 50 cc's of this particular kibble, stat. No, it's simple. Right. Here, we have this product.
And it's either sold there. Now, where it gets sticky is where the various companies sell to online retailers or actually own online retailers. For example, Chewy.
Right.
And the owner, cat is on CD. Owner says, hey, I want to buy CD from Chewy. Will you write a prescription? And at my office, we say no, because it is not a legal prescription under New York state laws. That is not a prescription diet. It does not say on it like a drug vial would for use, by the direction of or under the supervision of a veterinarian. It doesn't. You don't need a prescription to buy food. And of course, Chewy says no. We won't sell it to you because it potentially is harmful if it's the wrong food for your pet. So it becomes this huge thing, and it's just one big annoying thing.
Which is funny.
So my solution has been to define, for example, the cat with urinary tract problems, to define the characteristics of a food that would be good for them, and find some matching over-the-counter products that fit that criteria, and say, here's a list of foods that meet my criteria for cats with urinary tract issues. See how your cat likes them.
Huh.
And so far, so good.
So
I can find that information readily on the manufacturer's sites, and sometimes it was a little bit of digging. But to say what's the phosphorus level, what's the protein level, how much moisture is there, etc.
Which still to this day, I find that to be an interesting, and I swear we've had this conversation. So correct me if we've been down this road, but why do they put the word moisture in the dog food list of ingredients when it's dry kibble? And what does moisture have anything to do with this? Isn't that another way with the air touching already rancid meat, making it even more rancid?
Well, the thing with nutritional analysis, there are two ways to look at the data of, how much fat, how much protein, etc. are in the food. One is called on a dry matter basis, which means with either by calculation or analysis with all the water taken out. The other is on an as-is basis, which includes the water. So if you were to look at the protein content on a canned food, it would look greatly different than on a dry food because of the moisture content. And you can do out the math to convert from one system to the other. But you have to tell the consumer how much moisture is in the food so they can, quote unquote, in their confusion about the label, assess it.
That's assuming that people are going to read the content and the label. And on top of it, you honestly have to have your degree and your expertise to be able to understand it.
Well, and you have to know the ways the industry can fool you. For example, by listing meat as the first ingredient, which everyone is told is good. Well, that meat is measured on an as-is basis, which means it includes the water. So when the first ingredient is chicken, that chicken is 50% water. When the second ingredient is chicken meal, that's 90% dry. When you take the water out, the chicken meal becomes more common in the food than the chicken. But the consumer thinks, first ingredient is real meat, this is good.
But it's not even really technically real meat, as we've definitely talked about many times.
It is not a beautiful roaster chicken like you would pick up in your grocery store.
But
it is scraps of chicken that were rejected from the human food chain. But it is moist. It is as that chicken that you might purchase in terms of, it's wet meat versus a dry brown powder, which is chicken meal. Or let's say there's rice, which is dry in there, or, lentils or peas, which are also dry when they are measured into that food. So the whole ingredient panel gets skewed by the presence of a whole meat.
But doctor, on the bags, it shows real, cute, adorably wonderful food.
Did you know Beneful is one of the most, it's probably my number one worst pet food on the market. Easily top 5 from any veterinarian that does nutrition that you ask. But they have won award after award for their packaging.
Of course.
Because it is beautiful.
Yeah.
It is top shelf.
And for good reasons.
It is a total lie.
Bill, it's a piece of art. Let's be honest. Let's dissect the fact that dog and cat food bags are works of art. They have the
art and very astute marketing.
Exactly. I mean, it is honestly a Rockwell. When you look at some of these bags, it is just, the lines are perfect, the colors are the right choice, and we've talked about how the colors have to be aesthetically pleasing, and how that's what drives people in. And we even had this discussion one time, just when we were talking and not doing a podcast, about how kids cereal and pet food They draw people in by the colors and the characters.
The colors, yep. And it goes back to magazines too. Why do you think Time magazine had that red border all the time? Because it stood out on the shelf, and your eye was drawn to it.
I thought it was a good magazine. That's not why?
But why did you see it? You saw that before you saw Newsweek.
I guarantee everything that I've ever picked up magazine-wise has some kind of color and cartoon to it. That's why they're probably comic books. So yes, that's unfortunately. Yeah. When I picked up my first Time magazine, I went, where's the colors? Where's all the comics in here? It was not Mad Magazine that I was expecting.
Yep.
So, what has you, because we already know what has me on my soapbox, but what has you on your soapbox this particular week?
Oh, jeez, there's so many choices. So many choices. But actually, it's something that Susan Thixton brought to my attention yesterday, which I hadn't had the opportunity to share with you in our pre-show chat. There's a website called veterinaryiintegrity.org. Just like you would spell it, veterinary and then integrity.org. And it's about DCM, dilated cardiomyopathy. And we've discussed before the grain-free foods or the legume-containing foods and their role potentially in increasing the risk for this disease. Well, this site belongs to a gentleman who actually owns a food, what has been termed the boutique exotic and grain-free foods, the BEG diets, as nicknamed by the nutritionists at Tufts. And basically, Tufts Nutrition Department and some of the other DCM advocates have done nothing but bash every food that is not made by Purina Hills or Royal Canin and contains grains. So Dr. Lisa Freeman being the most prominent in her criticisms. This is a nutritionist who told pet owners not to read the ingredient label. Don't bother, she says. And you can look up her blog where she explains why, but basically it's like it doesn't give you information and you will never understand it. Well, there's an empowering statement. You're too dumb to understand this, but yet feed it to your dog because she says so. Well, anyway, this guy is actually suing her to retract some of her statements based on the financial support and influence provided by those big three pet manufacturers. So this gentleman, Daniel Shuloff, wrote a book, and he has a grain-free formula that, to my knowledge, has never been mentioned as being one of the implicated foods. And he feels they're being unfairly scapegoated, and he's going to court for it. And it's like, whoa, here's somebody really sticking up for themselves and demanding the real science rather than just the big company byline of, oh, well, not our foods, and you must feed grains.
Now,
I was very enlightening.
Now, what really still gets to me is the fact that you have this inferior and destructive grains that are in majority of these foods. That's part one. Yes. And then part two is that you're loading them up with starches. And it's like right there you have strike 1 and 2. And then we're going into referencing back every episode we've ever talked about, we are not exercising our dogs neurologically or cerebral or physical is what I was going with.
Mental challenge or physical, right?
And so we're loading them up on the worst possible diets, and yet we're supposed to just trust somebody that they're doing right by us?
We're supposed to trust somebody when every article that seems to be published, and if you look at any scientific article, regardless of the venue or what have you, they're obligated to disclose any potential conflict of interest, like so-and-so funded my research or the raw materials were provided by. you're supposed to be transparent. And you'll see, funded by Hills, Royal Canin, Purina, in all their articles. Purina actually built the building at Tufts Veterinary School that the whole nutrition department is housed in. Even if you did not want to be influenced by that, how can you avoid it? You're human. You walk into it and say, thank you, Purina, for putting a roof over my head. It would be inhuman to ask someone not to have at least some degree of bias. But the degree of bias against every grain-free food is mind-boggling to me. And the criteria with which they advocate you judge a food, they say you must do an AFCO feeding trial. Well, all an AFCO feeding trial means is that 6 dogs survive 6 months eating this food. That's it.
Which you can't tell. You can't tell a reference because you're only 3 months technically in. Because if a dog has been raw fed, let's just say hypothetically, here's your scenario, raw fed, and they go in for a 6 month, you have that 12 weeks before the actual internal body is able to adjust to it. What is it? 10 to 12.
And obviously in these feeding trials, they're using laboratory beagles or what have you. But any dog can survive 6 months on basically anything.
Right.
They also require that the company have a nutritionist on staff. Well, what does that mean? Is that staff nutritionist any better than one you hire on a contract basis to do formulation? I don't see any difference whether the person punches a clock every day at your office or is hired by the task and does the job. It's not like they're out there in the plants every day, overseeing everything.
Yeah.
And there are several really ridiculous criteria. To miss the bottom line that the problem is not that there are no grains in these foods, it's that they're using legumes and plant protein in place of meat protein. And plant protein is woefully deficient in taurine. That's where the problem lies, not in the lack of grains. It's the lack of meat. And any basic biology-minded person with a little bit of physiology could figure that out. And we've got people who are PhD, DVMs, and boarded in nutrition that can't. Either they're really not smart, or the influence of these companies is overriding their judgment.
Well, with the wonderful student loans that you guys have unfortunately amassed over the years becoming a doctor, with the deep pockets of these companies to bail out said problems, I mean, it's got to be a little tempting.
Or to fund your research. I mean, I don't think any of these people are foolish. I think they're just influence/brainwash, /bias.
And it's possible.
And they can't think outside the box like maybe they could have when they were in college.
Yeah,
and that's one of the things I'm so grateful for my Cornell education is not only did they teach us the stuff we needed to know, they taught us how to think and question. And I had a physiology professor who was brilliant in that regard. And I dreaded taking his test, but I always learned something from his test. Because it would be things like, imagine you've been called to Mars to, analyze this new species that's been discovered. And he'd make you apply your physiological knowledge to a totally new situation. And it taught you how to think. And it also proved you'd learned the principles that he needed to teach you. But a totally different approach than probably many universities get, where it's more didactic.
I'm now trying to piece together. Okay, so if I was to go to Mars to study species, now I'm going through this process in my brain right now.
And it's a puzzle. It's a challenge. It's taking what you know and applying it to a totally unanticipated situation. But that's what the world is. And certainly as we all continue to evolve and as our foods change, I mean, we know, now we have GMO crops. We know wheat has how many more genes than it did originally? 30 or 40. Everything's different. It's a new world.
Human foods are loaded with a lot more sugar now than they were.
Sure. Right. We have more sugar. We have more glyphosate. Mm-hmm. We're exposed to electromagnetic fields. I mean, all of these factors come into play. And our interpretation and, decisions about how we're going to react to them and what we're going to do to counter them. I mean, it's challenging to come up with a plan. Right.
Well, yeah, because you're having to do the math. Whether you're talking, animal to animal or you're talking human to human, the math changes because the variables, obviously, with our diets have altered everything, which is why there's so many babies that are born with different barriers because of our personal nutrition.
Sure. Well, and just think of, the kids with peanut allergies. I don't remember any kid in my elementary school having a peanut problem.
I never did. Yeah, but never heard of it.
In fact, on Thursdays, one of the choices, Thursday's lunch choice, because, the lunch program was pretty bad. But Thursday was peanut butter and jelly day and soup.
Yeah.
And, that was your choice. So they literally fed it to everybody, and nobody had a problem. Now, there are kids who can't walk in a place where there might be nuts.
Right.
Because they are so sensitive.
It'll actually say peanut-free zone on the door.
Sure.
Or,
we have, I don't know if you have the chain Five Guys around.
Yeah.
And, they have bins of peanuts out for you to snack on while you're waiting for your order. And there's a big sign on the door. If you have a peanut allergy, there are loose peanuts everywhere here, basically. Don't come in. It's crazy.
Well, it's...
But like I said, we're evolving.
But we're not...
This is one of the ways that's not good.
I was going to say, in a scientific stance, I don't know if we're evolving in a good way.
Right.
So that's where I look at it.
I agree.
When we're actually starting to become allergic to natural ingredients or foods,
right.
That's when there's a problem, because that's a real weird sign. It's not like a peanut has been brought to a factory. There's a factory that's making these peanuts. This is a natural, from the earth type, food. So if we're becoming allergic to that, what's next? Lettuce?
Right.
Or...
Well, there's tomatoes are a common allergen. There's tree nuts and, root nuts like peanuts.
Yeah.
And there's gluten.
Well, yeah.
The gluten molecule has gotten bigger and bigger with time.
It's like, I think to myself, I probably would go back and say this conversation was had back when lactose intolerant became a thing. And I would imagine that would have been a time where two people just like us would have been talking, going, well, you know what? I don't remember ever going to school and seeing anybody having lactose intolerant. And, obviously...
What was the school lunch when we were growing up?
Dairy.
You had that container of milk.
Yeah.
And it was whole milk. It wasn't, 1% or 2%.
Yeah.
It was whole milk.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you were lucky, you got the chocolate.
Well, yeah, it used to be whole milk, 2% or chocolate. And, of course, the chocolate ran out the fastest. So if anybody went to school during our time, I'm an 80s kid and went to school through the 80s and 90s. And, of course, we went for the whole milk. If we weren't going to have chocolate, it was, well, okay, we're stuck here. But even at that, I don't remember really lactose intolerance being an issue as well.
No.
Now it is.
And we were snagging the ice cream sandwiches when they were available.
Well, and think about the ice cream trucks that, really were all over the place.
Right.
Or the little ice cream guy that would push a little cart and he would have it. Now it's a lot different, which is bizarre.
Yeah.
Which again, here we go digressing into a whole different field, but people are probably wondering, what does this have to do with dogs and cats? Well,
it totally parallels dogs and cats, because we have dogs and cats that are allergic to various proteins. We have dogs and cats testing allergic to grains. Whether it's formal, technically allergy or hypersensitivity, doesn't matter. They are intolerant of certain food ingredients. It's the same thing.
I would go with hypersensitivity, and the only reason why I would really focus more in that area is the fact that it wasn't an issue until the last 2 decades when grains became so destroyed. We were just look at the plants that have the grain. They're honestly garbage, and they're out being exposed.
And the upswing in glyphosate in Roundup. I think that is a factor.
Yeah, it is. And so, we're seeing how our own bodies have evolved and how we're intolerant to a lot of things. And it's like, okay, we've talked about this so many times. Look at back to the 90s, and we say, look at the things we were told not to eat. GMOs was one of the things.
Right.
And then you had so many different things that we were very cautious about and said, okay, well, we can't eat that. And of course, those people end up having kids who ended up having allergies. And now, where are we? Well, the same thing's going to, parallel with the dogs and cats. They're becoming allergic to things that they were able to eat. And now, all of a sudden, they're not.
Yeah.
Kind of bizarre. There's the science right there. And it's literally Science 101. I mean, it's so simple to break this down.
Indeed.
Yeah, right. So, let's move to since we're on this type of topic, I think we're going to go into the adverse reactions to drugs and products, and then we'll expand to the next part of that. But since we have so many different things that really fall into this topic, let's go into that.
Okay. Where you want to start?
Well, you're the doctor. I mean, I can honestly, I can make stuff up.
Pick a product.
Well, I mean, I definitely want to go with drugs first because we're in a very highly drug-induced type of world right now. And of course, over-vaccination and so on has become such a problem. So let's start there.
Yeah. I mean, the number one drugs for me for reactions right now are flea and tick products.
Right.
Especially the oral ones. I'm seeing a lot of different things that pop up. And that class of drugs, they're called the isoxolazines. That's right. But it's Bravecto, NexGard, Simparica, Credelio, a bunch of others. But basically, they are a neurotoxin that affects the insect's neurologic system. The problem is the dog and the cat, for that matter, also have that same neurologic pathway. It's just not as predominant in a mammal as it is in an insect. So the theory being, we'll give enough to kill the insect, but not enough to kill the dog. Now, to me, when you make that statement, that doesn't sound good.
No.
We're gonna find that line of toxicity. Well, we know there's always going to be individuals that fall outside that line, and given that these products stay in the animal's body for at least a month, and in the case of Bravecto, at least 3 months, what's the potential for cumulative toxicity if the owner gives multiple doses? And I've got dogs seizuring and having problems on these drugs, and every day I get messages on my Dr. DR.COGER Facebook page about, hi, you wanted to know, I gave my dog this is what happened. And these are sad, sad stories, some of which, end in death of the pet. And these things are on the market.
So,
it is frightening to me.
From my standpoint, it comes down to, okay, it affects the flea and tick's neurological systems. But it has the same ability to do the same with a dog and or cat, if I'm not mistaken? Or is it just dogs?
Yeah.
Okay, so the process here is the fact that you have a prescribed dosage. And of course, you have this small little thing, so it's going to be a mass amount of dosage for that. So of course, it's going to kill it, but it's still enough to cause some type of paralysis in a dog or cat. So the increased amount, so the increased amount that you give the dog or cat increases the chance of them to suffer the same regards as the flea or tick. So
correct.
It's like, well, okay, we're using this drug in a very high amount to this little bug and bugs, because there's more than obviously one per dog or cat. But then as we continue to apply, the dosage is so much higher for the dog. So it's like we're doing the same thing for the dogs or cats that we're doing to the fleas. And yet nobody's talking about this except for you. How is it that it seems like...
Well, there are other people talking about it. You just happen to stumble across me.
Well, I mean, I hear you talk about this stuff years before it seems like other people jump into this. That's one of the reasons why I love talking to you.
You know, there are a small number of us that have this viewpoint of, you know, essentially skepticism about some of these new products, and, you know, a hyper awareness of adverse reactions. Because when you choose to support natural health, you know, you automatically kind of are rejecting some of the conventional treatments or products.
Right.
So, you know, we almost are on hyper alert for an adverse reaction. So, I mean, in a sense, it's a bias. I freely admit that. But I was just thinking as you were saying this, these particular monthly flea tablets got on the market, and when they did the testing studies to approve them, a lot of times they'll do those by giving the product to veterinarians and veterinary staff to say, give this to your dog and you'll report back, here's the protocol. So, for example, Bravecto, the 3-month pill, got to market on the approval study using only 294 dogs. 294.
How is that even a good number?
It's not a representative sample.
No.
Credelio, which is one of the once a month, 284. Of those 284, 182 got the product for 90 days. The balance were controls. You know, NextGuard gave it to 615 dogs in 333 homes. So, you know, that's an average of 2 dogs per home. They gave it to 415 dogs, 200 were controls, and they gave essentially 3 doses. They treated for 90 days. This is nothing in the realm of giving a medication that the owner who listens to their vet is going to give 12 months out of the year, year after year. So, I mean, just think of those numbers, 294, 284, 330, or 615 in 333 homes. Now, in the time frame between, I want to say it's like a year and a half, there were 24,111 adverse reactions reported with regard to Bravecto.
Remember that. I remember reading this.
Or excuse me, NextGuard.
Was it NextGuard? I thought it was Bravecto.
Bravecto was 22,626.
I remember this.
So, you know, they tested it on 294 dogs and got it to market. And then we have over 22,000 reacting. That's dogs. 2,222 in cats. I mean, that's mind-boggling. The pre-market testing is not adequate, clearly.
And then, of course, you have...
tell us how the general population is going to react to these drugs.
And then you have to add in one more thing, and I know I'm going to throw you into a frenzy on this. So everybody kind of hold on tight. So the other part is the flea and tick collars.
Mm-hmm.
That, I mean...
Very, very similar sort of thing.
It is. I mean, and when you think about it, that's one that I'd see more adverse reactions on than anything else, because yes, you have a single dosage with the pills or the topical, but this is something that's emitting its chemical into the dog's neck constantly.
Right.
And then, of course, if the dog has any flea bites underneath that area, that's going right into the system. I mean, obviously, it can go into the pores, but
it's not staying just on the surface of the dog.
Right.
And the Seresto collar specifically, I had a dog who was seizuring on it, and I get messages literally every day. I put the collar on, and 2 hours later, my dog is staggering around.
Mm-hmm.
And only somebody who's clearly not in touch with reality would not put those two events together.
Well, yeah,
but
I mean,
the level of denial, and I mean, I see it in my colleagues. One of them had a dog that was given an oral Bravecto, and 2 days later, the dog is a train wreck. And never on the list of possibilities of what was going on with the dog after every test was run was listed an adverse reaction to Bravecto. It's like, hello. You won't consider that this is possible. You won't open your mind to it.
Well, I mean, the dog was acting like a flea.
Within 24 hours, so we deny it.
And the dog's acting like a flea would with the reaction to the actual chemical. Probably not as much, but obviously they're going to die immediately. But the reaction is, I'm having some kind of chemical, induced overdose here. There's something wrong.
Right, I'm having neurologic signs.
Right.
When you provide or apply, let's say, like maybe a topical or the flea collar, a neurotoxin to an insect, and you get neurologic adverse signs in the dog, it's a no-brainer for me. I'm hearing hoofbeats, I'm thinking horses, not zebras. Right.
Which, but then I have a feeling, though, as people are listening, they're probably thinking the same thing, though. It's like, I didn't think of it this way. And yes, obviously, I'm going to think of it this way because I've been trained by one of the best out there and taught this stuff. So, of course, I understand what you're saying. But for those listening, they're going, well, this is the first I've heard of it and the first time I'm thinking of it, and this makes sense.
And most people, yes, you're absolutely right, would not know, how does this flea collar work, or how does this oral work?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really important question to ask of any treatment or drug or whatever you're going to do, whether it's for yourself or your pet. How does this work? Because once you understand that, you can understand how can this go wrong.
Right. And again, people are probably thinking, well, the actual treatment itself, this medicine is only going to kill said bug and should have no reactions to dogs or cats or even, obviously it doesn't to humans.
Well, based on the 294 dogs, that would be correct.
Yeah.
Based on the world population, 22,000 of them had a problem.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
And the one piece of information I'm missing, because it's proprietary, is how many doses they sold. So I can't tell you what percentage of reactions that 22,000 represents. However, I can say if it was your dog, based on the messages I get on Facebook and by email, these people are pretty darn upset and sadly in many cases heartbroken because they lost their pet trying to protect their pet from parasites.
Right. And you're doing the right thing, but doing the wrong thing. I mean, and that's such a hard pill to swallow, no pun intended.
Yes. And depending on where you live, I mean, these ticks are carrying Lyme and other tick-borne diseases. They're nothing to be trifled with. But, there are other ways to manage them. And other ways to, if you must use chemicals, and there are certainly times you must, to use them wisely and as safely as possible. And for me, that does not include putting them on or in the dog.
So that brings a question. What would you suggest?
That's the bottom line. What do I do?
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody asks that.
Yeah, well, what do I...
It really depends on the situation. There are some natural repellent and herbal products and essential oil products. There is simple avoidance for some of us. I'm blessed that I can control my yard. I don't have a huge tick problem in my yard. Sadly, some of my neighbors, they have deer tromping through the yard every day. So what they can do is different than what I can do. But I don't take my dogs into heavily tick-infested areas. I don't go hiking in the pine bush where you come out loaded. I do try to get as much sun in my yard because ticks like the shade. They don't like direct sun. It dries them out. I will, if I have to, spray chemicals judiciously and minimally in the yard at a time when I'm going to be gone for a while so I can protect my dogs and myself for that matter. I'll use natural things like tick tubes. It goes on and on. There's always a way if you're committed to it. But it's more work than slapping on a Seresto collar, I'll guarantee you that.
And that's right there the marketing strategy of everything we talk about, whether it's nutrition or it's preventative.
Well, you read my blog on convenience, right?
Yes.
I mean, we want it convenient. We want Burger King.
Yes.
We want it our way. We want it now. And this isn't an area where that's available.
And that's the problem. And see, we're in this, again, I don't understand this fast-paced lifestyle that we don't have any time. There's, if we have time to feed ourselves, we have time to do the right things. We can find that time. But that's the problem here. How do you find the time? And so, we do trust the professionals who say, okay, well, you have a flea and tick problem on your dog or your cat. Here is a simple neck guard. Okay, great.
Right. Yeah. Oh God. I give my dog this pill and he's set for 3 months and I don't have to think about it.
Exactly.
People are in love with that concept.
Well, yeah, because again, there you go. You got 3 months that you don't have to worry about this, opposed to daily check. I don't want to have the daily check. I'm too busy for that. Right. So I totally get this.
I get it. I totally get it. But if your dog is the one who has a reaction, I mean, there is no greater guilt than knowing you've done something that may have caused your dog harm.
Right.
No greater. And I don't like to play the guilt card on people because I don't think it's productive. But in this case, all I want it to do is to make the person think before they act and make an informed decision. You may say, look, I am out of options. Excuse me. Nothing else is working. I'm going to slap that collar on. Okay. You made an informed decision. That's good. But the thoughtless use of a product because it's convenient without thinking through or researching the implications, to me, is a recipe for disaster.
Well, it is.
And I saw it the other day. Golden Retriever comes in. The entire neck was raw and oozing from, guess what, the Seresto collar. Mm-hmm. And that picture it was shortly after the picture went around Facebook. And I had never seen that particular reaction before I saw the picture on Facebook. Mm-hmm. And literally a week later, it walked into my office.
Oh, my gosh.
And not that other flea collars don't cause that sort of reaction, because they do.
Well, yeah, you're putting a chemical. That's
yeah, a chemical that is meant to leach out. The other thing is, and I wonder if I could test myself for my content of the active ingredient in Seresto. Everybody who pets your dog is getting exposed to that. I'm forced to touch your dog. But, you put a Seresto on, that stuff is all over your dog's coat. So I'm getting secondhand exposure with every dog that's wearing it, or cat for that matter.
Well, that goes for everybody in pet industry, whether you work at a big box store and you just pet the dog or cat as they come in, grooming, veterinarians, vet techs.
Right.
I mean, it's...
Well, but my issue is, if you're a casual pet store employee, you don't have to pet the dog.
True. Well...
A groomer, a veterinarian, different other professionals, we have to touch the dog to do our job.
Yeah.
And it's not like you can take that collar off and magically the other stuff goes away. You know, it takes time for that to come off, if you will.
So we have now pet drug victims, and so I think that the best thing to do is transition to pet food victims, which is again going back to all these recalls. And you know, we talked about this before. There was 2 raw feeding companies, of course involved. We talked about that being the Grayson family farms who had raw frozen food. And I'm going to use the word because there's no other way of putting this particular bacteria but the bastard child, Listeria. And of course, Darwin got hit with the Salmonella, which is of course, you know, their favorite child. And then secretly behind all that is, of course, as we talked about so much already, is the hills. So we go into this pet food victims, and majority of pet parents are victimized. And of course, it all comes back to knowledge, which is what this is always going to be about. It's about spreading knowledge and saying, hey, you're not doing wrong. You just don't know what's going on. Now that you know, at least you have a better shot. Knowledge is power. So kind of walk us through this whole pet food victims in your eloquent way, because me, it's just going to be, you know, a deranged kind of person.
Well, I mean, basically, you know, if we're buying a commercial pet food, we're buying it on faith that the manufacturer has done their job and has provided us with a safe product that will nourish our pets. And sadly, this isn't always the case, whether it's intentional, unintentional, the fault of raw material suppliers, you know, you name it, bad luck. But the amount of food that has been recalled is just mind-boggling. Since 2012 to today, it's something like 75 tons of kibble, 76 tons of treats. Now that's treats. I mean, those are like dog biscuits, freeze-dried things. 16 tons of canned food. Only 993 tons of raw. So really, raw is not that big a deal when you consider raw is a meal versus 76 tons of treats, which are intended to be fed as treats. Raw is not a big offender.
But it's not
just massive quantities of food.
It's not even being exposed as a problem. It has the most bizarre and pointless, quote unquote, air quotes, because of course you guys can't see me because I'm just radio side.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know, we're talking ridiculous low amounts. And again, if you guys want to hear more about this whole Listeria / Salmonella combination of rants, you can look back. We did a whole episode on it. So I'm not going to dive that one into that spot, but you know, it's ridiculous. I mean, we buy, and we were talking about this. There is an acceptable amount of Salmonella and Listeria that's going to be in our natural food that we buy from stores. It's going to be there.
Right.
And then you go to these other companies who are actually providing an alternative to the madness. And yet you're calling BS on 2 of your very favorites for no reason. And you're not hearing of a dog dying from Salmonella or Listeria.
Right.
You're hearing about high levels of vitamin D or, you know, this tainted
or pentobarbital.
I was going there.
Which is a dog. We're going there, okay.
That's what I was doing.
Or for that matter, melamine, which didn't belong in food at all, but was the cause of kidney failure and death in thousands of dogs and cats in the 2007 recall.
See, if there was a raw feeding company, whether it was a Darwin's or this small mom and pop farm that had a pentobarbital or something in their food, okay, we can talk. But when you think about how a dog or a cat is going to go out in the wild and eat a bird or a rabbit or even see an armadillo on the road and start eating the interior of it, because they will, or a deer, and they're gonna go up to it and they're gonna eat it. How much levels of salmonella or listeria is probably in that particular deer or whatever it is?
Or the rabbit poop that's out in my backyard.
Yep.
Or the dead chipmunk that my girl got. And she did give it to me, and then she took it back and swallowed it. You know, or the dirt and sticks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, dogs eat stuff.
And wait, but I'm trying to figure this out.
Or the old buffalo wings, the ones you tossed out after the game, they made in the trash. You know, that's been sitting at room temperature overnight, presumably, because you tossed it in the trash after the game was over.
Yep.
The dog did it the next morning when you got up. You know,
but
dogs can handle that stuff.
That's it. Dogs and cats can handle it.
Melamine, they can't handle pentobarbital, but they can handle a few bacteria.
That's what their stomachs are meant for. Their bodies are so intricate, and they're able to do so. So that's why I look at this and go, it's so ridiculous. We're talking...
Again, my point earlier about looking at the dog from the point of their biology.
Yep.
Rather, and their normal physiology, and then talking about how they should be fed.
I'm still wondering. I have BC coming up on the radio in a couple weeks.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know.
Henshin?
I do what?
BC Henshin?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's great. Now, you've done radio with me, so you know how hard it is to do that short window. But how do I work in the entire fact of AFCO and all of this into that 25-minute little bubble is going to be the challenge. And I know once you get him started, he's going to be right there engaged just as you were and everybody else is. It's like we need like 6 weeks to just focus on just the nutrition side. And even at that, we would still have... He is. So I'm thinking, outside of here, as we're talking about this, going, it is going to be a constant issue, but trying to open up everybody's eyes just to think about it. Just do the simple math of this. You don't have to change, but you just have to think about it. And it's like, that's the whole thing. I'm not saying everybody should change. I know you're not. Don't change immediately.
Right.
Just think about this. And if you can get your hands on that bag of dog food, Google each piece of ingredient, and it's going to shock you. That's the other part. And then, of course, the individuals who take their dog food, pour it into a plastic bin, close the lid, and it's deteriorating.
And the most important mistake that they make, they then throw out the bag. So if their dog gets sick from that batch of food, they have no way of knowing what lot number it was.
Exactly.
Whatever you do, leave the damn food in the bag. Put that in your plastic bin.
Yep.
That way, if you have a problem, you know where the problem came from. Or, even in the worst situation, your dog is sick. You know there's a recall on the brand of food you fed, but you threw out the bag. You don't know if what you have is contaminated or not.
Right.
What do you do? I mean, the cautious person gets rid of that food.
Yeah,
Kibble is not cheap, and nobody's got, mucho bucks to throw away.
Well, if they do, I mean, I'm definitely looking for, an adoption.
Oh, yeah.
I think we all are.
Yes, absolutely.
You want to adopt me?
We all need funding. We all need funding.
You can be my crazy uncle or crazy aunt type thing and adopt me.
Yeah, there you go.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah.
So
and fund a radio show and a podcast.
Oh boy. Great. Yeah, can you just imagine this is all I do for my days is just do this. That would be kind of fun.
Would it be fun?
I don't know. I would be kind of
I don't know. How much information we could share.
Oh gosh. Oh boy, that would be awesome. But then, I do enjoy getting outside and getting a little bit of that vitamin D, especially now that we're in that spring, summer time. At least I actually am not freezing. But then again, what is our big problem that we're seeing with dogs with the heat? Heat stroke.
Yeah, it's coming up.
Yep.
Coming up.
So it's like, be prepared, everybody. Make sure your dog has plenty of water because they're wearing a fur coat. That's a lot better than
Right.
most fur coats you buy in or any kind of coat that you would buy in a store, not a fur coat, but those things are hot. So, yeah.
Well, and especially if you have a pushed-in face dog.
Oh, yes.
You know, the pugs, the boxers, the shih tzus, the lhasas, etc., etc. Those dogs cannot blow off heat efficiently. And whether you shave them down or not, they're still going to get overheated very easily.
But, you know, with some dogs, you shave them down and then you're exposing them to sunburn, and then there's another issue right there. So that's something else to worry about. So we're talking about food and stuff like that, and I know we can't mention the name, but how much can we talk about on the freeze-dried food that you're part of?
Well, we can talk a little. It's not a food; it's a treat.
Treat, sorry.
But I was introduced to someone who said, "I want to formulate a nutritious, healthy treat." And this person does a lot of training, so they said, hey, you know, we want it to be pocket friendly. We want the dogs to really love it. So it's suitable for trainers, suitable for anybody taking a walk with their dog, what have you. So I said, sure, I'm in. And it was so much fun. We talked about so many different ingredients and settled on 3 formulas with different meats. The food is super meaty rich, and where we could, we included organ meat for some of the unique ingredients that those materials bring to the food. And we put in superfoods for like plant nutrients, phytonutrients, mushrooms for their inflammation-reducing properties and their anti-cancer properties. So it's a treat, but it's also a nutrition boost. And I'm really excited. We're almost ready to start production.
You know, you're involved in so much.
In the not too distant future, I'll get my first bag.
Ooh.
It'll be so cool.
Will it be fancy, you know, color coordinated type bag, or is it going to be something that's just going to be logistics?
Oh no, the tentative design for the bags is very colorful, so they'll stand out on the shelf. The treats themselves do have a significant green content, so there's going to be some green in there.
That's awesome.
It is.
I'm inspired.
You know, it's like, okay, this is green. This is good.
It was inspired by me.
One of the things that I found most exciting is I talked with one of our producers. The fish we use are whole fish, so even the scales are in there.
Oh, good.
Which, yeah, they do bring some unique nutrient qualities in there, and they're shiny. So our fish treats are going to have a green tint, but they're going to shine. There's going to be a little bit of sparkle involved.
Oh, God, let's not go into that story again. Oh, my gosh.
I knew you'd go there.
I heard the shiny, and I went, oh, God, we're going to the sparkle. Oh, no. Oh, no.
Yes.
I think we gave her too much time.
Thinking of like raw feeders and whole food feeders, we're trying to emulate using the whole animal, which again is a more natural way to put a food into a dog. Well, even if it's just a treat, it's not intended to be a nutritionally complete food.
Yeah, but I mean, let's look at treats for a second here. A lot of treats contain a lot of ingredients that are in your dry kibble. You have your corn, your wheats. You have different things that are just not going to be good. Or you're going to have this meat that literally is worse than anything that you could possibly imagine, and it's put into this treat. Mm-hmm. So you're going, well, can you just see it? And I know we're ranting, and I am definitely on a soapbox today. But, you know, you think of these dog treats that are wrapped up in this pretty little design, but it's no different than what's in that kibble. So what you're feeding your dog is cheeseburgers and McNuggets for a treat, and then you're going home and feeding them cheeseburgers and McNuggets for dinner. And then we wonder, why are dogs so obese? Why are they only living to, a short age of 5?
Not healthy,
right. It was kind of like Grumpy Cat.
This treat, the meats are human quality. The plant boosts and everything else, human quality, USDA organic when we can do it, gluten-free, you name it, certification, whatever we can get. But these are things you could pop in your mouth and say, this is healthy. And USA, Canada sourcing, no China, no scary places. I mean, a super, super high standard.
And that's what it should be.
This is what I want for my own dogs. That was when I had the conversation about, did I want to be involved in this project? One of the things that convinced me was how much they wanted to have this quality that was such that, it was suitable for their own dogs. It was suitable for humans. It was above and beyond anything anybody else is putting out there.
Well, I will say I'm looking forward to knowing more about it and definitely seeing this happen because it's definitely needed. I'm not even seeing a lot of treats that are out there on the market. Yeah, I know no big box stores have them that have anything of good quality ingredients. So I'm just glad to actually see that it's coming around.
Yeah, I mean, when I do training treats for my dogs, I either make my own jerky or I'm using small pieces of meat or string cheese or something. Mm-hmm. Not hot dogs. I used to use hot dogs. I can't anymore. But, it's real food.
Right.
That's my standard.
My only problem
with it's not hard, and in some cases it's cheaper than some of the quote-unquote premium pet treats.
It is. And
I'm always scared by going into a pet store. It's like, you mean this little 7-ounce package of biscuits is $16?
Uh-huh.
Really?
Right.
You know how much meat I can buy for $16?
Yeah.
And, prepare it into little cubes and put it in the freezer and then I have it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I just can't have cheese in my pocket when I'm doing any kind of walking with my dogs or training treats because I have a tendency to eat that myself. So, yeah.
Well, but you can, which is the point.
Well, yeah, but then they look at me and they're...
But then, you're out.
Yeah, I'm all out, and they look at me going, wait, that was mine. Well, you're always trying to get my food, so why shouldn't I get some of yours? I totally get that.
Exactly.
So, we've talked a lot about drugs. We've talked a lot about nutrition, but I'm curious what you've been hearing, because my one of my obsessions is CBD and hemp for treatment.
Right.
And now that things are becoming a little bit more understandable and we're starting to change our mindset. Now, I'm personally changing a little bit on hemp because I'm worried that there is a little bit too high of levels of THC in hemp, where in CBD it's not. What are you hearing on your side?
I'm having people using a variety of products. I get a lot of very favorable reviews to CBD oils, and whether they're hemp, most of them are hemp origin because the marijuana origin ones are not legal in New York State right now. But yeah, I'm liking it. I've got seizuring dogs seizuring less. I've got anxious dogs being calmer. I've got cancer dogs improving.
Yeah.
I think there is a load of potential for this. And one of the people I was at Cornell with is actually part of a new CBD company, and their pet line is called Old Friends, and her name is Dr. Karen Gelman. You definitely need to talk to her about how they went about formulating their CBD and what her experiences are with it. Because it's been nothing short of amazing for me.
It is.
I have had, maybe 10% don't respond to it. But, 10% don't respond to any number of drugs.
Right. And it may not even
be... that number doesn't bother me.
And one thing I've noticed with CBD oils is that some of them are better than others. So it's kind of one of those interesting things that I've come to conclusions that, okay, maybe one product may not be as good as another. For whatever reason, I don't know, but I'm noticing a huge difference, and I'm seeing it become a lot more of a treatment now, and especially with more states actually legalizing marijuana, it's become a lot different. And which is funny because we had this conversation probably 6 months ago, and at that point it was like, well, we're just not being able to do anything with it, and see how quickly it's changed. It's so bizarre how quick that can just turn around.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, well, New York is on the verge of legalizing. And I think, the path has been started by so many states that I think pretty soon it will be almost universal. And that will be wonderful for veterinarians because, as I understand it, in some states, veterinarians are prohibited from discussing CBD with their clients.
That is correct. Yes.
Which is so frustrating because, the client can research it, but they're not getting their questions answered by a qualified professional. So essentially, we're casting them off to the internet and whatever website they may come upon first, rather than the pet professional who could really help them and guide them.
Well, because
it makes no sense.
It was because it's been deemed a narcotic. Which, again, I've tried to figure that one out. It's CBD oil. We're not talking about the THC side. And yet
right. The part that gets you high is not present in these products.
And you can't even have the THC. The THC would kill your dog. So, I mean, we're not even talking about that. The hallucinogenic side is gone. Yes. Is there a trace? Of course. You're not going to ever remove it completely. But it's such a microscopic amount that it's not a big deal.
It's the amount of alcohol in kombucha.
There is it,
or less.
I would think even less. I mean, it's
probably less.
The amounts are. I don't have the exact number, but they're really. It's like a shadow in a sense. Just imagine the shadow it would cast if it was a metaphor of a person standing there. It's just the shadow. So, I guess we can go and Disney it up and say Peter Pan's shadow before it was attached.
Right. Yeah. But it's not going to have any physiological effect.
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all. So that's why I'm like, I'm loving the fact.
Other cannabinoids, there was actually an excellent article in, I want to say it's the June 1st Journal of the American Veterinary Medical Association, listing responses in seizure dogs to CBD.
Yep.
And of course, prior to that, we had the osteoarthritis study that proved it as effective as NSAIDs at Cornell. And they were using, treadmill analysis, force plate analysis in arthritic dogs to make their measurements on. And, owners can be subject to what they're hoping to see. But the treadmill and the force plate that tells you how much pressure the dog is putting on that paw, they don't lie.
Right.
Those numbers are there. And it showed CBD as effective. So, I understand the phobia that people have with something that we previously considered a drug, an illicit drug, if you will. But now it's becoming, this is just another drug from a plant that can do good for people and for animals. And we need to open our eyes to it.
And it's not even really, when I think drug, I'm talking prescription-wise, most people would think synthetic. I'm like, this is holistic. And so I'm not even concerned.
Right.
So that's like, you're not really going into a lab and creating something. It really is as holistic as it's going to be.
You're extracting it.
Yeah.
Extracting it from a plant.
Yeah.
In the beginning, penicillin came from a mold.
That's true.
So we don't have a hang up about using penicillin or related antibiotics because they came from plant life. I'll lump it in the big term of plant life, but it wasn't mold.
I think I'd still rather eat.
And there are other drugs that were found in plants first.
Well, yeah.
And then they figure out ways to synthesize them. It's not a big deal.
It's not. And but this is complete holistic knowledge here, and not knowledge, but it's a holistic treatment better than actually, pumping your dog or cat up with a bunch of different pills and going back to adverse reactions to medicine kind of, topic.
Right.
And then, of course, don't we want our dogs to live longer and our cats? So
that's the whole goal.
That's the goal here. So it's kind of like, all right, so there we are. So I have run out of things out of my list of things. What have we not talked about?
The only thing we haven't talked about is my latest project that's just about to launch, which is Check Your Pet Food.
Oh, that's right. I did write that down. I am sorry.
I told you about that.
You're right.
That's all right. So if you want to know about your pet food, really from the scientific level, I'm part of a project that will actually submit the food of your choice to a laboratory for analysis for a variety of compounds, which you can pick and choose. Whether it's proving the nutrient analysis or testing for whether the ingredients on the label match what's in the bag, whether you want it tested for glyphosate or other heavy metals, and more. It's an amazing project that came out of the Know Your Pet Food project, which is part of Pause for Change, Rodney Habib's nonprofit. And basically we're showing what kibble is and what it isn't. But with my project, we can also test raw foods, we can test home-prepared foods, we can test pretty much anything and give you the peace of mind that you know.
So what you're saying is that you're going to become part of the pet food police.
I don't know if I'm the police.
I like it that way, though. I thought it was.
Wait. I want to be Abby Shudo. I'm the scientist. I'm the forensic food tester that tells you the truth, and then you take it and run with it.
Here I'm going to do it. I'm going this way. I'm literally going to digress. You did it to me.
Okay.
So I have to ask the question, since you brought her up. Did you hear the actress itself said that she was very much afraid and intimidated by Mark Harmon, who was on the show with her?
I did read that, and I guess there was an incident with Mark's pit bull that bit a crew member, and she basically said the dog doesn't belong on the set, and there was an argument and such over that, and I don't know what happened beyond that.
Yeah, the only that I saw that changed to that was that she stated that he threw her down to the ground, and I'm like,
oh, I missed that.
Yeah,
I wonder. The tabloids tell so many stories,
right,
and create some embellishments to sell papers.
Well, actually,
I don't know.
It's just to get traffic.
I know that my treat manufacturer knows Polly and says she's a wonderful person. And you've never met a bigger dog lover than Polly Perrette?
I now know who you're talking about. Now, I won't say names either, but now I know who you're talking about.
Oh, okay.
Yes. You put that group message up, and I know who you're talking about. I know. Okay. I now know. Okay, so I say no more.
All right.
Yeah. When I got that picture, when you sent me, I know people are going great now. They're talking amongst themselves. But yes, yeah. I know now. I know exactly who you're talking about, and it makes all the sense in the world. Now it's just like a light bulb just went on in my head.
Oh, geez.
That's 2 hours. It took me 2 hours for that to process. Wow, I am getting slow.
But as a fan, I really do miss her on the show. She was great person, a great actress to play that role. But that's how I see Check Your Pet Food. It's it's the lab that provides the true story,
which is needed.
Then you take it where it needs to go.
And honestly, I would, of course, I've got all my education from you, and so I trust everything you say. And I always tell everybody, if you really want somebody who is connected to all of this, you really have to talk to one person, which is you. And if I'm going to have somebody check pet food, I wouldn't think of anybody else that I would trust more than you. Rodney, I like him. I haven't met him yet. I trust his judgment because of all of you who have all vouched for him, and he's done a great job.
No, Rodney, I am so not in Rodney's league. It is amazing.
Well, none of us are.
He is one in a zillion.
Yeah, none of us are. I mean, we reach for it. You, on the other hand, are a lot closer to that world, and honestly, I think you're in that world. No, you're in that world. Look at the group that you're involved in. I mean, you got Rodney, you have Karen, you have Susan. You are 4 juggernauts who are part of this.
Well, and there are many, many more who just aren't as much. I think, and some are, some aren't. But, we're more public with it.
Yeah.
But there are some incredibly hardworking people behind the scenes that you will meet some of them at the expo. You've never heard of them, but they make it possible for all of us to do what we do. And they're the ones sharing our information, giving us, saying, "Hey, I found this article. I think you should read it." There are our web skimmers, our questioners, the people who say, "Hey, this doesn't make sense. I saw this dog," and they just make us look good day after day.
Yeah, but your knowledge does help. I mean, when somebody comes,
sure.
What you're saying in a layman's terms is that somebody comes up to you and asks the teacher what's 1 + 1, and you know the answer to it. They're still not sure if the question, they don't understand the answer. They need somebody to be able to articulate that. Well, of course, we all have to go to somebody who is much smarter than us, which that's what this is. But yeah, I've already pretty much planned my entire time. I'm just going to be a little nerd sitting on the floor, legs crossed, just
sucking it in.
Yep.
Sucking in the knowledge.
That's it.
Yep.
That's how it's going to be for me.
There'll be about 450 friends with you doing the same thing.
Well, I imagine so.
My advice is, though, with Rodney and Susan Garrett and Susan Thixton and Kendra on the program, get your tickets early because, it's not a question of if this is going to sell out, it's when, which is why I started selling tickets so early. Because people think, oh my God, it's not till next April. Why are you selling tickets in June?
Yeah.
So people can make their travel plans, arrange the time off from work, because, the chances of Rodney and Susan Garrett being in the same place at the same time, other than on a Facebook news feed, is very, very slim. Because their schedules just diverge. And Thixton, the chances of her coming to the north, if I moved it to August, it would be better for her. She is a warm weather gal.
I could swear, though, this past one in April, I swore you got her something to keep her warm, to manage through the trip. Or, oh wait, no, I think I was talking to her and she said that she was buying a large amount of socks to make the trip.
Oh, well, she was going to AFCO, and that was somewhere it was going to be cold.
Oh, that's what it was.
That's what it was, and she had to buy socks because, when you live in Clearwater, Florida, you wear sandals. It's warm all the time. You don't wear socks much. And, you go out by your pool and you soak up the sun.
Yeah. But I always find her to be entertaining. Oh, well.
Yeah.
Well, I like I said, even yesterday, I had this urge to do a podcast. I was definitely in this mindset. I needed to sit down, and who else would be the best person to be able to sit down and talk to besides you? There isn't anybody, so I was so glad when you're like, I'll do it. I'm like, sweet, I got my Saturday planned.
Oh, that's so kind of you. So kind of you.
I will put this up. Well, everybody's listening to it as early as Sunday. So, as always, I really appreciate you being on the podcast.
Oh, I always appreciate you having me.
Oh, well, you've got like 12 or 13 plus now one radio visit. So we're really. I'm still waiting for you to have your own show. I've been saying it for a long time.
Who knows? Who knows?
I've been saying it's going to happen. I have.
You never know.
Well, I'm Chris Green. Have a pet-tastic week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Okay, gotta go in my bedtime.